Hello everyone, it's Carrie at Inky Bee Journals and Ephemera. Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time visiting my channel, hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. So today we are continuing on with the Florals and Foliage notebook, and we are up to part 3. And today, finally, we are going to look at how to do the brad binding. Now this may be something you've seen before, it may not have been, but this is what it looks like. Now these are your paper fastener type ones. Some people might know these or may have seen them advertised as mushroom paper fasteners. But they are the more typical ones that you find when you are in a newsagent or a office supply store. They're not the typical ones that you might find in a craft store, because the other ones are more flat, but these can work just as well. So that's what we'll be working on today. This is the notebook that I showed you last time, that we are basically making one of these. It's got a closure here that is just a Velcro closure, and when you open it up, we have a pocket here, we have one signature, there is the center of the signature, which is where you see the other side of the brads. And there is the back, and we have another pocket just here. So this is what we are making. So now we will continue on with this. So far we have made the cover. We have the signature here that we are going to be using. We have, well, I will explain this to you. This is my template for doing the holes and doing the binding with. And this is the cover. Now there is no pockets in this cover yet, because we will get to making those pockets after we've put the signature into the cover. If you haven't seen parts 1 through to 2 so far, and there are 2 videos in part 2. There is a part 2 episode 1 and a part 2 episode 2, and it was done this way because I had a reasonable amount to explain, and I wanted to break that down into a couple of different videos for you, so that it wasn't quite so much for you to handle all at once. So if you would like to catch up on those videos, I will put a link in the description box below for a playlist titled Notebook Tutorials. And today's video will also be in a playlist, which I will also link in the description box, which will be titled Binding Methods, because this is, after all, showing you how to do another binding method. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so we'll move that up there and move these to the side. So the first thing we need to look at doing is putting the holes in our cover and putting corresponding holes in the spine of our signature. So how we go about that? Well, there's probably a couple of different ways that you can do it, but on this channel I try to give you ways that you can do things that are easy. Not everybody is comfortable with the idea of getting a ruler out and trying to figure out all the specific measurements, because it can be a little bit confusing for some people and frustrating. So to help you with that, I come up with some easier ways. And this is another one of those easy ways. Now, before I forget, if you saw the last couple of videos, you will see that I had explained to you these handwritten instructions on how to make this cover base. And just to remind you that these instructions will work for any size cover that you are working with, any size book, notebook, junk journal, or anything that you would like to bind like that. It will work for any size. So you could be making a tiny little matchbox size, you could be making something as big as a full size piece of paper. It will work because the basics work on any size. Likewise, this method that I'm going to show you for the binding is also going to work for any size. So what I have here is a piece of paper which I have cut to be exactly the same width as the spine on the inside of the cover, and it is the same height or very close to the same height. So when I place this in here, you will be able to see that when I fold these up, and I hope the camera can see this, but when I fold these up, it's not folding up the sides, and that's what we're looking for, because these areas either side of this middle piece are actually just your fold lines. Remembering that when we made this cover, we left 1/8 of an inch in spacing between the spine piece and the covers either side. And this is so that we can fold it comfortably without it breaking, tearing, or getting damaged. So we need this piece to be the same width as just this piece in the middle, but not to go over these fold lines, and to make it the same height. The next thing we do is, just move that to the side. The next thing we do, now I've done this in the lines so that you can see where my crease lines would be, but just to run over this and explain it to you. Once you have the width that you need, it doesn't matter what width you end up with, fold it in half so that it's in half lengthways. Fold it completely in half, making sure that your two ends are even, and where your two unfolded edges are even as well across the top, and just fold that down like that. That will create a line, a score line or a fold line straight down the center here, and that's what that black line down the center represents. Then we need to, so we now know where the center of this entire piece is. Now we need to figure out how to get the center line in the width. So we take one short end and we fold it over to the other short end, just like that, making sure that we get this edge here even, and across the sides at the top and the bottom even, and we crease that down, and when we open it again we'll have another crease line straight down the middle, and that's what that black line is. Now you have created a cross space right in the middle there, and I'll just highlight that with a cross in the other direction. So where that star is in the center, that is where your first hole, your center hole, will go right in the very middle there. Now, to create the other two holes that you will need, here's the other way of doing that. Take one end and fold it into the center line, and crease it down. And then you will have this line here. Now if you want your let me just show you here. If you want your brads to be this far apart, you will need to create a second set of lines, and I will show you that in a moment. But if you want them to be closer to the center, you would use the first line that we just created here. But if you don't want to use this line and you want to make another line a bit further up, I like to put my end pieces about 1/2 inch to 1 inch in. Then you take the end piece and you fold it into the last line that you created and you crease that down. And that gives you this second line. So right in the center of that cross piece there is where hole number 2 goes. And we repeat that process on the other side here. So we take this end and we fold it in to meet the center line, and we crease that down, and then we open that up, and that's where this line is created. And then we take that end piece again and we fold that in to that last crease line. We fold that down, press that down, and we've created this other line here. In the cross space here, where they meet in the middle, and I'll put another cross through there, that is where you put your third hole in the center there. So when we place this back in here, this template, we know that those 3 holes are going to be evenly spaced right in the middle of our spine. And likewise, when we have a look at our signature and we open that to the center, we can place this in the center, and we can make sure we're placing it so that there is a little bit of an overhang either end, overhanging the edges of the signature pages, that is about the same, and it should be about 1/8 of an inch. And then you can mark where your 3 dots would go, your 3 holes would go, that would correspond to the holes that you then place in your spine. So what we're going to do before we poke those holes, what do you make these holes with? Well, there's a couple of things you can make those holes with. You can use an awl or some type of a pokey tool. Somebody on another tutorial earlier suggested an ice pick, so you could try one of those, but you're looking for something sharp and pointy to go through the layers of your paper and through the layers of your chipboard. Thickness of your chipboard, I should say. You could also use a hole punch like this. Now, while you're just doing paper like this, something like this will be fine. This will go into the center here, and it will reach to the edge lines here where we're going to put our other 2 holes. However, when it comes to putting your holes in your spine and putting your holes in your signature, this is not going to reach all the way. So this is where you can decide to use something like this, because you don't need to slide it into the sides to get to. Alternatively, if you are lucky enough to have one of these, this is the Crocodile Big Bite, made by We Are Memory Keepers. If you don't have one, you might want to consider investing in one, because these will save your hands a lot of grief in the long run. If you think you are going to be making a lot of books, or doing a lot of bookbinding, making ephemera with eyelets and things in them, you might find that having this will be something that you really are glad you bought, because it has a few benefits. Number one is it will go through the thickness of things that these will not go through. And number two is it has all of this space here to slide something like book covers and things in that you wouldn't have the option to do with one of these. So keep that in mind. I will put a link in the description box below if you are interested in looking into one of these. So consider that. Now, first of all, we will we'll do the signature. So we're just going to open this up here, and I'm just going to grab a couple of my jumbo paper clips. You can use whatever sort of paper clips or paper holders you have, and I'm just going to slide one there and one on the other side, and this will just help keep the pages together and where they need to be. And I'm going to take this template, but before I put this in here and put holes in, I can use these lines. I don't have to have the holes in it yet, but I can use these lines. I need to make sure I've got about 1/8 of an inch on this end, overlapping the edge of the paper here, and about 1/8 of an inch on this end, overlapping the paper edge on this side. Then we can take our pen and we can just put a dot in the center there, in line with the center line, into the crease line of our signature. We can put a dot there and a dot at this end, and so we have 3 dots. This one's not real big. We have 3 dots there telling us where we are going to put our holes. But we need to put the holes in this before we can put the holes in the signature or in the cover. So I'm just going to use this, and so I'm just going to slide this in here, and I'm just going to punch a hole straight in the center like that. And I'm just going to do the same where I've got these other markings, straight in the center, or as close to that center as you can manage. So I have my 3 holes, and because I cannot use this to put the holes in here, this is where I'm going to use this. So I'm just going to place this in here, and I'm going to have this set on the 1/8 setting. This is, if you're not familiar with this, this is the Crocodile 2, the Big Bite, and this is the hole punch and eyelet setter. And I will put a link for this, or one very similar, in the description box below if you are interested. And we're just going to line this up as best as we can. Hope that we get this in the center, and we're just going to squash this down, and there we have our hole in the center. And the benefit of this is we have all of this space here to slide our book in, and that's something you don't have the option of with something like this. So I'm going to slide this in further so that we can do our center hole. try and line this up. It's going to be a little bit difficult. Take your time. It's not easy to see everything clearly, but just do the best that you can and try to get your holes where you can in the center here where this crease line is. It's not always perfect, but just do the best that you can. Oh, sorry about that. Things falling down on my desk. So now we have our 3 holes ready to use in our signature. And as you can see, one's slightly too over the edge, but that can happen sometimes. It's never perfect, but that's okay. So I'll swish those little pieces out the way. Now we can use our template to do the same thing on our spine, on our cover. I'm just going to use these little paper clips to hold this and just make life a little bit easier so that it doesn't go moving around too much while we're doing this job. Having one of those days where things don't want to coordinate very well. Do you have those days? I have them frequently. Okay, so we've got that in the center. So I'm just going to get my pen and I'm just going to put a dot in the center of each of those holes. And then I'm just going to remove that because it's going to be easier without it there. So I'll move those over and I'll bring the crocodile back in and I'll repeat the process that I just did on the signature. So line it up as best as you can. And press down, and there's your hole. See how it's fairly in the center, and that's what you want. And you can see it on the other side too. But this hole is big enough to put the post of the brads through, but small enough to hide behind the head of the brad itself, so it's not going to be noticeable. And we'll do the center one. So there's our center hole done. On the other side. And we'll do the third one. And I might turn it around this way. A little bit of a shadow happening in my way, but I'll do the best I can here. And there's my 3 holes all completed. So I'll swish these little bits out the way. Okay, so these holes should line up fairly well with this, and it does. It's not 100%, but it's fairly close. So the next thing we need is our brads. So I'll just move this over for a moment. Now these are the brads that I've been using I've got a collection of colours and sizes here. If you are interested, I will put a link in the description box below for this. And I'm going to choose this colour here, which is the bronze colour, and it's the colour that I used on this one. And I'm using this size. And as you can see, there's different sizes there. I did play around with a couple of these sizes, and I decided that these ones here, these little ones, were just a little bit too small. This size was a little bit too big, but this was just a good size. And this size here was just far too big. It might be alright if you had a much wider spine, but this is just far too big for this project. So I'm going to use 3 of these, this size. So 2, 3, stick those there. This little thing back in here. Excuse me. And we'll bring this back in. Now, this is where you might find yourself getting just a little bit frustrated, because it can be a little bit fiddly to get these in. When we put these in and we flatten out these little post prongs, you need to make sure that when you're flattening them out, that they are running vertically, so that they are running, and I'll show you with this one again, they're running in the same direction that your fold line is, because if you have them running this way, you won't be able to close your book. So just keep that in mind. So now, there is no specific way of doing this other than fiddle until you think you've got it right. I usually start in the middle somewhere and turn this round if you can, so that you know it's going to open out the right direction. I will suggest to you, and I didn't get them down before, but I do have a small pair of pliers here, because you might find you need them to turn them round, possibly. And this hole here in the center, we've got to open this up and try and get the prong here to go through this hole, just the same way as we would if it was a needle that we were stitching in, where we're stitching in. It is a very fiddly job, I have to admit. This is not my favourite method, and I am going to turn this around a little bit. Try to keep things nice and lined up, and once you have it lined up, you can spread these little feet apart like this and squash them down. Just like that. And then we can do the next one through the next hole, and hopefully into this. Is a little bit fiddly, as I said. It can take a little bit of time and patience. Make sure you're turning it around so that when you open it up, it opens up in the same direction that your center crease does, and open that up like that, and get your third one, and repeat the process with the last set of holes. Make sure you turn it round so that it's running the length of your center crease and open those little feet apart and press that down. Okay, we can remove these and we have this ready. Now, if you are not comfortable with it being left like this, that's fine. You can always cover it with a little bit of decorative tape or paper or something just to hide that off if you wanted to. But we have bound our book, and if you like, you can go along and just open each page and just give it a little bit of a press down. But they do open reasonably flat, so which for me is something important, because I find it difficult to write on a book that is, you know, not laying flatly enough. So sometimes you may find you might like to, because they will move a little bit, and it is something that I'm not real keen on with this method, so I don't use it too often, but it does give you the option to replace your signature if you want to, or take it out and add pages, or take pages away and do whatever you'd like to do that way. But there is your brad binding. You can, if you want to, press these down. Sometimes I might get something like this and just press them down a little bit harder. If you have a jeweler's hammer, something like that might help. So you could use that as a binding method. This is not something I would be keeping a great long time, but if you wanted to, you could always take these out and replace it with stitch binding if you wanted to. So there's your brad binding done. In the next video, we will look at putting some pockets in the one in the front and one in the back, and we might look at putting, just like we have on this one and here, and we might look at putting this Velcro closure on as well. So there you have it. So I hope you consider giving this a try. We'll also put a cover on the front and the back of these. So we may not get it all done in the next video, but we'll make a start on it. So there might be a part 4 and maybe a part 5 as well. Okay, well, I'll leave the video there for now. If you liked this video, please consider giving me a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell so that YouTube can send you a notification when I upload another video. And until next time, thank you so much for watching. Please stay safe out there, and I'll see you next time. Bye.